Thank you. Okay, you're going to see something for the first time. This is new material that I've created. I do that for corporate, for companies, actually even more recently for startups. This is a 2-hour session that I will squeeze into 1 hour. So there are going to be things that I'm just going to flip through and go quicker. This is why I'm doing everything. And if anyone have seen the video, the Simon Sinek video, Start with Why, this is my why. I really believe that every company can be the most innovative company in the world. And so my job in this is to help companies build a culture of innovation. I am serious with this. I would ask you not to take photos of this. This is something that I'm doing for corporate. There is some confidential material there. I didn't write confidential below, but I trust that you will respect this. This is going to be like drinking from the fire hose. So stay with me. I will leave time for questions. We will be done by 9, but stay with me, okay? I'm going to start with a short clip, and we'll talk about it.
We have got to cut cost, people. Ideas.
We could open an account on FedEx.com, save 10% on online express shipping.
Okay, how about this? We open an account on FedEx.com, we save 10% on online express shipping.
That is wonderful. You just said the same thing I said, only you did.
Yes, no, I did this.
You know, one of the things that corporate America focuses on today is cost cutting. It's all about cost cutting. Can we do more with less people, with fewer people? Can we do more with less money? It's all about how do we increase the bottom line by lowering our expenses, because our bottom line is revenue minus expenses. So we can control the expenses so much better than we can control the income. That's not true. Peter Drucker made that statement. A business has only 2 roles, marketing and innovation. And we're going to focus on innovation. Innovation is what brings the top line up, because there's so much you can do with cost cutting before you start cutting your kidneys and your liver and your heart out of the company. Do CEOs think that this is important? Several surveys show that in this one, actually a more recent one shows this number, close to 80% of CEOs put innovation in the top 3 priorities for their company. Another survey put innovation as 84% important to company. This one is actually a global survey. It's not just here at the US. 68% prefer this to be organic. And you know, one of the things we typically think, oh, if we're not innovative enough, then what we need to do is acquire our way into innovation. 70 to 90% of acquisitions fail. Even when they're successful, you just acquired one new product, one new service, maybe a group of people, but you did not become an innovative company. So 68% prefer innovation to be internal. Interesting point is that 22% actually know how to measure it. How do we even know if we're innovative or not? Innovation is everywhere. Innovation can be in products. I know that typically when we use the word innovation, the first thing that comes to mind is like an iPhone or a product, something that you hold. But innovation can be in products, it can be in services, it can be in processes, it can be in business models. If you think about Uber, Uber did not invent the car. Uber did not invent the driver. Uber changed and invented a business model. Just to link innovation and creativity, those are 2 different things. Creativity is something that each one of you has, even if you don't think you have it. Creativity is something that you have. Innovation is something that the organization does with that creativity that you have. Innovation also means the implementation of your creative ideas. And that's the link between them. I'll just skip this one. One of the most aggressive sports ever, right? You use 2 brooms. This is called a stone. There's one person that pushes the stone, and the others, first I thought that they were just cleaning. As it turns out, they were not. I'm not even sure how what you do with the broom actually affects the ice so that the stone goes somewhere. I'm not sure they know how they affect it. But this is a very good analogy of innovation. And the reason is you're going to see so many companies that tell you to be innovative. You will see so many companies that say they're going to follow the Google's footsteps and say, we're going to give you 1 day a week to be innovative. So take 1 day and in that day come up with new ideas. Google actually mentioned that in their IPO. And in their IPO letter, they said, the founders, they said, we're giving our employees 1 day a week to be creative, and this is how we're so great. Fact that not too many people know is that Google has abandoned that practice. They don't do that anymore because it doesn't work. If you give me 1 day a week to not work on my day job, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to catch up on emails, right? Because my inbox looks like 1,000 something emails, so I'm going to catch up on email. Now, a lot of companies will build an innovation hub, right? An innovation lab, something. We're going to build a building. Well, if you give me a building, an innovation hub, what I'm going to do is check up on my emails at the innovation hub where nobody's going to bother me, right? Those don't work. You know, making statements, big, huge statements about innovation don't work. Innovation is like curling. You need to allow it to happen. We need to first allow you to be creative enough in your role, whatever your role is. Tom, even finance, although I don't condone creative accounting.
Finance is more creative than accounting.
Yes, but in every role. And I know that people think that innovation is something that only happens in design. Now, a lot of my work is based on my PhD research that was done between 2008 and 2010, where, and I'll tell you the story, I was going to research what makes people forward emails with commercial content to other people. So, you know, it's a good marketing dissertation and so on. And I met with my mentor, and he started asking me questions about it. And at some point he said, you know what, you're not passionate about this topic. So we need to find something that you're passionate about. And he keeps poking me and prodding me to try and get what I'm passionate about. And at some point he just asked the question, what pisses you off? And at that point I was pretty agitated with his attempts, and I said, you know what pisses me off? At that time I was working for Texas Instruments, large company, after working for several startup companies, including startup companies that I started myself. And I said, you know what really pisses me off? Can I use those words here?
We use words.
Okay, fair.
Yes, Tom uses words.
I can see he's using words right now. So I said, you know what pisses me off? Why are people so much more creative when they work in startups than when they work in large companies? Because I'm surrounded with people, and I'm not going to say nobody in TI is creative and all, but I'm surrounded with people that I don't feel that they're even trying. So why does that happen? He said, I think we just had our topic. We just found our topic. So for the next 2 years, my research was global. I interviewed people from companies in the US, I shouldn't say the US, in North America, because I went to Canada, Europe, even China, Israel. So all around to understand what's the difference in the environments. Bottom line, I'm just going to show you the top line up there, which showed me that the ratio of people being creative, and now these are the same people. So you worked for a startup company, you are going to work for a large company, you're going to be interviewed by me, and I'm going to ask you to compare the environments. It's not because I'm going to compare you with, I was pointing at you and then I looked at the name and I'm like, I'm not sure I'm going to read this right.
Sudsy.
Sudsy. Okay, Sudsy. So Vicky, you're not so creative. You work for a large company. Sudsy, you are a lot more creative. You work for a startup company. I can't really compare the input from both of you because you have different perspectives. So everybody in my study had to have worked in both environments so that they can individually compare the two different environments. The ratio was 6-to-1. People felt 6 times more creative in startups than they did in large companies. That's a pretty alarming sign. In general, you can see that the categories go into different, starting from the outcome, as I said, was strongly positive, creativity in startup companies. Autonomy was a pretty strong one. There are several factors, but what I realized when people ask me, can you just give me like the Cliff Notes version of why are people more creative? It really comes to one word. United Airlines. Okay, no, United Air, as you realize, are 2 words. But you familiar with that picture? You know what this is? So this is a person that's being dragged off a United Airlines airplane because they needed that seat for somebody else. So he was already sitting in his seat, getting ready to fly home, when all of a sudden they got on the plane and they said, we need you to be removed because we need a crew member to be sitting here that we need to fly to another place. He resisted. They brought security people. He was banged up, blood all over, and that's what United did. Now, United had to fix this. How did United fix this afterwards? And I'm not talking about the PR fiasco that they had. How did they fix it? They changed their policies. Very simple. From now on, once you cross the threshold into the airplane, you will not be taken off that flight. You can still be taken off that flight even though you have a boarding pass while you're sitting in the gate, but not after you're in the plane. Big difference. They fixed it with a policy. One day I remember I read a headline that said, Southwest Airlines removed the passenger from a plane. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear Southwest Airlines remove the passenger from a plane? What's your first emotion?
Did he get peanuts?
Okay.
What was that?
Can I prevent people from speaking?
What did you say? Did he get peanuts?
Did he get peanuts?
Oh, I
What?
thought you said
The
did
first
he get wasted? Did he get drunk or something?
the first feeling that comes to mind is, really? Southwest Airlines? That's weird. It's not Southwest Airlines. So I'll tell you the brief, so I had to read this, and I'll tell you the brief version of it. So the plane has left the gate, and then all of a sudden, the plane turned back. The pilot decided to turn back the plane, got back to the gate. The crew went to a woman that was sitting in that plane and told her, can you please follow us? She followed them. She got to the gate. At the gate, she was told, call your husband. Well, as it turned out, their 20-something-year-old son in Denver just had a head injury, and she was flying somewhere else. Her husband was trying to get a hold of her, but her phone was already off. He was smart enough to call Southwest Airlines, who connected him with the gate. The gate told the pilot, just know this just happened. Pilot had his discretion to turn a $50 million airplane around that's burning $20,000 of fuel per hour, turn it around, go back to the gate. They removed her. They booked her on the first flight direct to Denver, booked her in a hotel, got all of her stuff over there, and arranged for transportation to get her to the hospital as soon as she lands in Denver, all free of charge. So Southwest Airlines removed the passenger from a plane. That's Southwest Airlines. And I remember when I read this, I started wondering, why would one company do what United did and the other would do what Southwest did? Well, so I looked at their mission statements. And United Airlines, you can see with me every day, we help unite the world by connecting people to the moments that matter most. Very enjoyable flight too, right? Delta Airlines, helping more than 160 million travelers get to the places they want to go to each year, except the flight itself. We're not going to make that very the thing you want to do. American Airlines, we're dedicated to make every flight you take with us something special. special enough, sure enough. So everything here focuses on the customer. We're telling our employees that the customer is the most important person, right? We're telling you that the experience that the customer has is the most important thing that we have, right? There's only one airline that says nothing about the customer. Southwest Airlines. Our people are the single greatest strength and most enduring long-term competitive advantage. You know why? Because if I'm going to take care of you, if you're going to feel valued, if I'm going to give you the autonomy, if I'm going to create the right culture in our organization, you will take care of the customers. Southwest Airlines got it right. Southwest Airlines realized that the most important thing that they can do is make sure that they have the right culture. Not Peter Drucker. I know that this is attributed to Peter Drucker. He was not the first person to say that. I could not find who was. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Doesn't matter how good your strategy is, doesn't matter how good everything in your company is, if you don't have the right culture, you're not going to be successful. Culture is important not only, again, it's just like innovation. Culture is not only important in the design group, it's important in the administration, sales, production, finance, everything in the company. Culture is something that the company has. Now, this used to be the chart that I used to describe culture, and I'm going to go through it very, very quickly. On the left side, this is corporate, so this is kind of the leader to employee relationship. On the right side, there's team, and that's people at the same level within the same group. On the top, you can see the positive things. On the bottom, you can see the negative things. On the positive corporate side, autonomy. It really boils down to autonomy. Do I let you make decisions? On the right side, positive for teamwork, that's our ability to conduct constructive conflict. And I'll talk about each one of them. Bottom left, negative on corporate, bureaucracy. Bureaucracy, policies, processes that are not helpful. They're just meant to keep you in a box. And on the right side, in the teamwork, that's office politics. I switched to really focus on two areas, and that is leadership and teamwork, because that's really where the culture needs to be. Teamwork, on the right side, you can see members of SEAL Team 6. That's the ultimate teamwork. That's teamwork where you can see, and I had to find a picture where they're looking at different directions, because I'll tell you something. I served in the Israeli Defense Forces, 35th Airborne. And there is nothing like turning my back to you and knowing that you have my back, that you will take a bullet for me. But you know what? You know that I will do the same for you. You know that no matter what, you are not getting a bullet from your back unless I'm dead. There's something about that kind of teamwork. Leadership, one of the hardest industries to work in is the defense industry, because everything there is so formalized, and RFQs and RFPs and the way they pay. You're smiling. Are you? Owen?
I served 5 years in the Army.
Okay, very good. Thank you for your service. So, anybody else here served? Thank you for your service. So, very hard group to work in. Very hard industry to work in. You familiar with the word skunk works? Skunk Works is actually a trademark for it used to be Lockheed, then Lockheed Martin. That is the group in the hardest industry to be creative in or innovative or have the autonomy that you need. Under Kelly Johnson, they developed the P-38, the first American fighter jet, P-80, the U-2, SR-71 spy planes, and the F-117 stealth fighter, among other things. Very, very creative group, but they worked differently than the rest of the company and the rest of the defense industry. So I like to use them as an example. My role in the defense forces the Israeli Defense Forces was a marksman, among other things. I was a marksman, so I see targets everywhere. This is the same chart that you saw before, but this is the new format. This is how I look at it. Again, on the left, leadership, on the right, teamwork, in the top, positive, on the bottom, negative. One thing that you'll see there in the center that appeared on the center of the previous chart is trust, and we'll talk about that too. Top left quadrant, autonomy. I like this quote from Teresa Amabile. Creativity thrives when managers let people decide how to climb a mountain. They needn't, however, let them decide which one. So autonomy does not mean, hey, Vicky, you just do whatever. Whatever you want to do, whatever you feel comfortable doing. No, this is the task we need to do. You choose how you do it, okay? Bottom left, bureaucracy. I like quotes from this person. Bureaucracy is the overuse of process, policy, and formalization to gain power or replace individual common sense. This is when we let policy tell us what to do instead of using our common sense. You would think that we've given the author, I will remember this one by heart. Top right, constructive conflict. I like this quote from Aristotle. It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain emotion and entertain a thought without accepting it. Think about that for a second. We can argue. The fact that I'm actually listening, Russell, I'm listening to you, I'm really considering what can I get from what you're saying, as opposed to the moment you start talking, I'm starting to think about my answer. And bottom right, office politics, Pat Lencioni, if you've ever heard him speak, I love hearing him. Politics is when people choose their words and actions based on how they want others to react rather than based on what they really think. So I'm not going to tell you what I really think, Angela. I'm going to say whatever will make you do what I want you to do. That's office politics. Okay, building a culture. So one of the things that I found from my research was essentially that companies start, when they're startups, they really start as having a very high culture of innovation. But as they grow, mature, whether you measure it by revenue, maturity, in years, size of the company, they lose it. And they lose it for multiple reasons. So what is it that they lose? And by the way, once they get to that orange line, the point of no return, if they got to that kind of low level of culture of innovation, there is no turning back. The work is just too much, and the organization resists the change so much that you almost get to the point where it's not going to happen, and then guess what happens? The company starts shrinking, loses customers, loses market share, loses revenue, loses employees, all the way to filing for bankruptcy. So what happens in the 4 different quadrants? The first thing that happens is autonomy goes down. I'm sorry, Jory, when we worked together, when the company was small, you could do whatever. We were there in the same room. Company is large now. You're going to have to follow policy because I can't manage all of this anymore. So autonomy goes down. The second thing that happens is bureaucracy goes up. We got to have processes, and this is how you do things. And if you want to buy something, you're going to have to go through the IT department. You're going to have to go through finance department. If I understand Tom well enough, he's going to put so many hurdles in your way so that we can somehow squeeze what you're trying to buy into the next quarter, right? Say yes. Say yes. Oh, you wouldn't do it to her? Yeah, you'll do it to her. Next thing that happens, our ability to conduct constructive conflict, our ability to argue, and for me to actually listen to you, Russell, and not just, as soon as you open your mouth, I'm thinking about the answer. Our ability to argue and fight, and then when we're done, it's like, hey, you want to go grab coffee or something? We'll take a break. We'll come back to fight later, and so on. And oh, by the way, you want to come to a barbecue at my house? I'm doing something with the family. If I know that your family is traveling, you want to come over?
I do.
What, you're vegetarian?
I'm there.
Okay, you're there. See, but then when we fight over things at work, we're going to argue and we're going to fight. But the thing is, we're going to listen to one another. That goes away. But the thing that comes up is, hey, so Vicky, there is apparently one promotion up here, and it's either you or I. So as soon as we go into the meeting, it's who gets the shortest route to get to Jackie over there to tell him that I had this idea during the meeting, and because I need that promotion before you get it. Guess what the dynamics of the meeting are. Okay, I really like to look at it as a 6-layer pyramid. Tell me it's really 6-layer. It is 6. So on the top is performance and results. Now, what does that mean? An innovative company makes 6 times the market share, we don't see it here, 6 times the market share, 6 times the revenue, 3 times the profit. In fact, if we normalize the profitability of 2 companies, one that's innovative and one that's average, after 5 years, the innovative company will make 5 times the profit of the average company, 5 times. Market share, I already mentioned, 6-1. There is an interesting organization called Spigot, and they did a survey of the 2-year net profit and they measured, their measure for innovation was the number of ideas by 1,000 employees, divided by 1,000 employees. So let's see if we can get a high rate. And you can see that overall the green line is theirs, the red line is mine. I kind of looked at the actual statistic, and this is an accurate line, it's not just general. You can see the correlation between number of ideas or innovation and 2-year net profitability growth. It comes from teamwork and leadership. So first of all, in the leadership scale, the reason we need this autonomy that I mentioned before is because of this vicious cycle. So if management, if your leader believes that you are, that they give you the autonomy, you are going to be creative. That's beyond doubt. That's all research showed, and including mine. If you're creative, the next step is to implement it. Well, the trust from leadership goes to implementation as well, because that means, it's one thing to say, I trust you think about great new ideas, but it's another one to think, you know what, I'm going to put money on what you're saying. I'm going to trust you enough to put money on what you're saying, and let's see what happens. When that happens, you get innovation. When you get innovation, you get financial results. So if I go back, the 2 types of leadership, on one set, leadership and teamwork, On one hand, you have productive, effective, and creative. If the teamwork that you have, if the leadership that you have is productive, creative, and effective, that's when you get those results. If your teamwork or leadership is unproductive or ineffective, you're average or less. Next is conflict. I already mentioned 3 types of conflict. The first thing is I like to ask, can I ask a stupid question? What's the answer? If I told you now, can I ask a stupid question?
I have faith in you. Yeah. You want to do that again?
Yeah, let's do it again. Can I ask a stupid question?
Sure.
Let's ask it again. You know what the right answer is, right? Can I ask a stupid question? There is no such thing as a stupid. Thank you for playing. This is going to take longer than I expected. Can I ask a stupid question? There is no such thing as a stupid question. Yes, there is. 80% of mine are stupid. 80% of my ideas are stupid. But here's the thing. If I don't ask them, I don't know if they, for any reason, happen to be in the 20% that's not stupid, in the 20% that was going to make you go, ooh, I didn't think about that. Or the 20% that would go, that's a great idea. But that's okay. We have to be able to ask stupid questions. I'm going to skip through, this is an exercise that I typically do that gives you examples of the 3. We're going to skip that so we'll stay on time. This is what a politically correct meeting looks like. You can see what's in the front and you can see what's in the shadows, right? This is where we have during the meeting, there is no such thing as a stupid question. During the meeting, everything that you say is such a brilliant idea. Vicky, that's such a great idea. Jackie, you know what Vicky just told me?
What's it?
That was the stupidest thing I ever heard. I can't believe that. I really appreciate your ideas, all of your ideas. We may not implement them this time, but that's a great idea, and I want you to hold on to it. How? Yes, sir.
Have you read the article called Better Brainstorming by Hal Gregerson? Have you heard about it?
I think I did.
It's called Brainstorming for Questions,
Yeah?
not for answers.
Yep.
I heard him speak a couple of weeks back, and he says that before you get into asking questions, first brainstorm, finding out answers. First session should be just make a list of 15 questions that you should ask.
Yeah. That's a great, in general, that's a great concept. I never subscribe to this is the only way of doing things. There is the 5 whys as well. You know, you say something, I'm going to ask why. Say it again, I'm going to ask why. So you explain to me why, the first thing, I'm going to ask why again. And you have to ask why 5 times. You know why 5 times? Why is it important to do 5 times? Because like if you ask the 6th time, they're going to smack you or something. I mean, it's like there's a limit to everything, right? I mean, so like what, you don't understand what I'm saying to you? I mean, you keep asking why. This is like when you have a young kid, you know, everything is why. Yeah, but essentially this is where you have the meeting before the meeting. You know, I'm going to coordinate with some of you kind of before the meeting. During the meeting, it's all going to be nice and pleasant as if I really listened to what Vicky had to say. And after the meeting, we're going to have the meeting after the meeting. We're just not going to have the meeting during the meeting. This is destructive conflict. You know, when this becomes, team, you got to stop this. And we're going to start fighting. And it's not your idea that's stupid anymore. Now it's you're stupid. You know, and if I say that, I also believe that. And then guess what team is doing? Now he's doing the same thing to me. How productive is that? The only one that's productive is okay. I have a bagel here. Must be time for a story. So I was sitting one day in in Einstein Brothers. Now you get it? I was sitting at the Einstein Brothers, and there were 2 Israelis sitting next to the window, and they were arguing. Now, I was the only other person in that restaurant that knew what they were talking about because I can speak Hebrew. And they started raising their voices, and they're starting to raise more. And at some point, you know, they're starting to use their outside voices. And it got to the point where, you know, people started moving away. There was this demilitarized zone around them. And as people moved away, you know, and by the way, nobody would go there and tell them, hey, mind keeping down a little? We're trying to enjoy life. No, everybody's just getting away. You know, it's not my thing, but I'm just going to be further from violence that might erupt any second here. But I knew what they were talking about. And this was not personal. I mean, they were yelling at some point, and they were telling each other, you know, that's stupid. You can't do that. But that was a professional discussion. And it was a discussion where they were listening to one another. They were bouncing ideas off of one another, and they were very passionate about it, but it was constructive. And I can tell you that, you know, at some point they kind of looked around and they realized people are looking at them and they're like, oh, maybe we stop it now. But they are friends. They kept on staying friends throughout this whole thing. That was constructive conflict. So I'm starting to build this as a structure. You can see that productive, effective, and creative teamwork builds on constructive conflict. On the other hand, unproductive, ineffective teamwork builds on the politically correct conflict and the destructive conflict. If you have those types of conflict, you're going to be unproductive. If you're going to have a constructive conflict, you're going to be productive, effective, and creative. What are the behaviors that let we use that? So we're peeling one layer down. Can you peel a layer? That's only if it's an onion or something else. Okay. Anyway, here are 3 behaviors that give you constructive conflict. 1, vulnerability. I need to feel, Chris, that I can be vulnerable with you, that I can ask a stupid question and you're not going to run to Jim over there and say, hey, you want to know what stupid question Yoram asked today? I need to know that I can ask that and be vulnerable with you, and it's not going to come back to hurt me, because otherwise I'm not. The second thing is, Chris, I need you to feel comfortable enough giving me feedback on my stupid idea or stupid question. And the third thing is I need to be receptive to your feedback and not take this as a personal attack. both sides on all three of them. Only if we have these three, we can actually hold a constructive conflict. Without vulnerability, I'm not going to bring up a potentially stupid idea. If I'm not willing to take feedback, we're not going to get anywhere further. And if you're not willing to give me that feedback, we're still not going to get there. The other behaviors that leads to destructive or politically correct, we have rules, we have policies, we have bureaucracy. The motivation is extrinsic instead of intrinsic. So if I try to motivate you with money or bonuses or things like that, that does not promote constructive conflict. That promotes different behaviors. And finally, office politics. You know, Vicky, which one of us makes it to Jackie first after the meeting to tell him how great you're probably going to make it, so you're going to tell him how great your idea was, right? You're not going to give me any credit, right? Thank you. That just eliminated the probability you ever getting hired for my company. Okay, next layer is trust. Trust puts it all together. And I'll say more about trust. Trust gives you the ability to be vulnerable, provide feedback, and be receptive to it. Lack of trust gives you all the other things. So if you've seen Stephen Covey Jr., the son, he wrote a book called Speed of Trust. He actually has a program, and he focuses on 4 things. He said this is what builds trust. Integrity, intent, both of them are character. Capabilities and result, both of them are competence. One statement that he made, look at the top one, that companies, organizations that have high level of trust showed 286% higher return on investment for investors. 286%. That's almost 4 times as much. Another person, David Horsager, he has this framework of 8 pillars of trust. Those are his elements. He actually did a survey, research, and he asked people what percentage of them will prefer to be known as trustworthy over taking $1 million. 75%. And he didn't just ask people that already have $10 million. Okay? 75% of people said that they would be willing to be known as trustworthy instead of taking $1 million. They see that as a longer-term investment. World Work, that's a UK company, and they did some surveys. 74, compared with companies that have low trust, companies with high trust, or employees in companies with high trust, experience 74% less stress, 40% less burnout, 76% more engagement, 50% more productivity. Just because you are in a trusting environment. Think about places you are working for or have worked for. Think about places where you had high level of trust and how much more fun it was. And guess what happens if it's more fun for you? It's just more productive, more creative. You're willing to be vulnerable. You're willing to provide feedback. You're willing to be receptive to that feedback. And this gets us to, okay, fine. I'm going to stop here for a second because we're kind of going to the second part of how we build trust. Where are you going, Doug? Okay. Are you going to use AT&T for that?
I'm going to try.
Okay. That will show you what happens if you stand up in the middle of my talk. So, any questions so far before I move on to how we build trust? Yes, sir.
Can you go back 3 slides?
No.
Please.
Okay. You're like my daughter. I say no. And
This one.
yeah.
So,
You're right. It was exactly 3 slides.
how do you measure trust? What is a high trust organization? What does that mean?
See, now you're just getting ahead. That's the second part. That's what I'm going to talk about. Ask him how he measures trust. He's not going to have an answer for you, but I do. I will show you. That's the next part. And you couldn't have asked a better question to lead me to the next part. Then you'll see why. Any other questions? Just want to get to the next part already? Okay. In order to build trust, there are two major categories of elements. One is structural, the other is transactional. And instead of spending too much time, I'll just go at the high level. Structural means how I see you. So Tom, how do I see you as a person in my team, or as my leader, or you see me as your employee? In terms of competence, do I know what I'm doing? Am I good at what I'm doing for this team? I don't need to be good at other things, but for this team, my role here, am I good at it? Competence. Second one, I'm jumping to the right, shared values. Do we share values? Third one is fairness. If you show up at work every morning at 6 a.m. and you don't go home until 10 p.m. and you come in on weekends because you know we have a deadline, we need to meet this, yet I show up at 9 and at 5 p.m. I go home even if I'm in the middle of a sentence, that's not building trust. So those are structural. Above it is transactional. That's very important because every interaction that you have with another person either builds trust with that person or destroys trust with this person. Every interaction, as short as it might be. So let's see how we can maximize it. This is the crown jewel for me. This is the formula for building trust. So to your question, Chris, how do you measure it? This is how I measure it. This is how, and don't, it's not as complex as you may think it is. Really, it has two major parts. The left side is the structural, the right side is the transactional. Let's start with the structural. Perceived competence. It's a very simple question. Chris, I'm going to ask you, anybody here that you know well enough that you work with?
Oh, that's real.
That's a real question, yeah.
Not that I work with, but we work in
Okay,
groups.
point to them.
John.
John, I'm sorry to do this to you. John, Chris, can you tell me on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you rank John's competence?
In what?
You tell me.
It really matters. Is it accounting or something?
What is his role in the group? In the context of his role in the group, how would you rank his competence? Okay, so I asked the wrong person.
I mean, he's definitely a performance driver.
Can you think of somebody at work where I'm going to ask you this question and you can give me somebody in your team that you can give me an answer between 1 and 10?
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Same thing with fairness. So the questions can be really simple. They're actually more complex than that. I'm asking a few more leading, well, not leading, but more specific questions on how do you rank that trust, how do you rank that competence, and the same with fairness, the same with value. That's one side of it. The other, now, what can you do about it to increase it? Get to know each other better. Improve and learn. So, you know, John, as it turns out, when I asked him between 1 and 10, what you don't know is he actually did give me an answer before. This was all set up, and he gave you a 2, where 10 is the highest. So, improve, learn. Show that you are more competent. That would increase that number. Monitor periodically. This is something you need to ask yourself on a periodic basis. You know, maybe once a week, maybe once a month. But just ask yourself, do I think that John is more competent than I thought he was last time I interacted with him? Assemble the right team. You know, I'm sorry to tell you, not all teams work well together. And if you put the team that doesn't work well together, you're not going to get high ranks and you're not going to be building trust. And if you don't build trust, you're not going to have vulnerability, feedback, and receptiveness. So assemble the right team. Avoid hierarchy. That goes to fairness. You know, if I'm working with Russell, my boss, if I'm working with him in the same team, I'm not going to feel free to say everything. Avoid that. I'm not going to go through much details. Time elements. The more time we spend together, the more we build trust. So if you think about it, if all we do is spend like 5 minutes a month together, how fast do you think we're going to build trust? It's going to take a while. There's also, you will see that the earlier interactions between us have a much bigger impact on building or destroying trust than later interactions. That's the value of first impression. What can you do about it? Spend more time together. Co-locate. Be in the same building or the same floor in the building. I know we're a global economy, we're a global world, which is kind of a redundant statement. Well, it comes straight from the Department of Redundancy department. So one person got it.
Sarah.
So the amount of time that we spend together, the more time we spend together, the higher the probability is that we're going to accelerate the trust that we're building. Maximize first interaction. The first interaction is more important than the second one, more important than you never get a second chance to make a first impression. That's where that plays in. The second one is the intensity of our interaction. Anybody heard of the 7-38-55 rule? No. Good. So, in our communications, the way we build trust, the way we build the rapport between us, 7% comes through the words that I'm using, 38% through my tone of voice, 55% through my body language. It's actually, if you want to, the easiest way to remember this is that, and it's actually not body language, it's facial expression. This is the work of Mehrabian in 1971. And the best way to remember it is you have the 7, 38, 55, and if you don't remember which one is which, 7% through the words of voice, through the words themselves, 38% through the tone of voice, and 55% through your body language, through your facial expression. Nobody got that one either. Okay. Now, you can actually, so if our meetings are face-to-face, right now we're having a face-to-face meeting. If this is a positive interaction between us, it is the most effective in turning interaction into trust, okay? If our communications are over emails, not so much. Not so much. It's going to take a while. You know, there's so much that you can convey. You can do something through email, like, you know, emojis or all capitalize or, you know, exclamation marks, question marks, exclamation marks. There are things that we can do to somehow convey a little through it, but there's nothing like a face-to-face meeting. Actually, there is. There are things that are even better than that. Life-altering events. You remember service, 35th Airborne? The people that served with me, I will trust to the day I die, because I trusted them with my life and they trusted me with theirs. So I will always trust them. Life-altering events, you know, we may be going through a natural disaster and, you know, we survived it, but we really helped each other through this. This is something you're never going to forget. You know, this is a level of trust that you build. But there's actually something in between, which is trust-building activities, team-building activities focused on trust. So I know that companies right now, since remember we focus on cost-cutting, right? The first thing that goes away is training, team-building. Team-buildings are just boondoggles, right? Your trip to Prague, what's the value of this? You have no idea what the value of this is, because that interaction is going to be better than 100% intensity, because you're going to build something between you that you will not build here in a classroom. That's the reason, Jackie, they're going to Prague. Next time, go to North Vietnam. You'll see how much trust this will build. No, not North Vietnam, North Korea. Okay, yes. Last part is the positivity of the interaction and how positive is our interaction. So, you know, be honest with me, be brutally honest with me. The interaction I'm having with you here today, rank it between minus 100% to plus 100%. Where would you rank this interaction? I'm not giving you grades, he is. He doesn't care. What? 92%. Okay, fair enough. And that's a very good point, because external factors can affect the quality of the interaction. I like you too, Sarah. Anybody else? Yes?
99%, because you just interacted with me as I went out.
I would think that the way I interacted with you would probably lower it, but
No, it's all good.
okay, excellent. That's constructive conflict. He did not take this personally.
So trusted.
So what?
I think you might have trusted.
Yeah, I'm not asking. You notice that I'm not asking Jackie, so I like the high numbers. So one thing there you can see, well, why didn't you just use P? Why did you use 2P minus the absolute value of P? This comes from something called the Losada factor that came from the broaden and build theory created by Barbara Fredrickson, I believe in 1991. Oh, as I said, 2005. Actually, it was 2004. 2005 is this paper specifically. But they claimed that the ratio of positive events to negative events has to be 2.9013. I read their article, I saw the research that they've done, and there is science behind it. The article actually I quoted below is an article that criticizes this ratio, but in general I'm using 3 to 1, and this is kind of how we look at it. And I'll give you an example of 3 to 1. How 3 positive things can get canceled by 1 negative one. So 3 of you have a birthday today? Yesterday? Okay. Anybody here born on January 8th? No? There's never anyone in the audience. So I was born on January 8th. You what? He is? On January. Very good. So you know who he shares birthday with? Well, no. So, well, we'll start with David Bowie, Stephen Hawking, Elvis Presley, and Kim Jong-un. So when you hear the Kim Jong-un, that kind of wipes out the first 3, right? So wouldn't you rather be born on another day? Yes, I'll do it if I could. That's a ratio of 3 to 1. Now, Chris, to your point, how do you measure it? Well, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So we have to have a way of measuring it. And one interesting thing is that I'm right now working with another company to build an app. So when I go into a company, I give them not just this talk with the longer version of this talk, but I also give them an app. And in this app, I ask them simple questions. There are videos built in it. There's text built in it. But I'm asking them questions, structural questions. And this is a simplistic view. This is not really viewed from the app. Kind of, how do you rank his competence? 1 to 7. How do you rank shared values, your shared values, and so on? It's actually a little more detailed than that, but not very hard to use. So then, at the end, I'm also asking you, how would you rank your trust in him on a scale of 1 to 7? And I'm using this to fine-tune the results that I'm getting, just to kind of what is your perspective on the trust. But the good thing about this is that it actually lets you track how you build trust. And it tells you, hey, you just had a meeting with Jory, and you know how I know you had a meeting with Jory? Because Jory just entered changes in the interaction between the two of you. You didn't enter them. I need you to enter them as well. I'm not going to go into the details. This is just a sample of a report. Look, it's scientific. This is scientific, and it works. And this is what it looks on the bottom left. By the way, that's the name, Trust Tracker. On the left, trust building. So this is kind of the development of trust between two people. On the right, this is what happens if any of the perceptions, competence, fairness, shared values, take place. On the top left, this is what you can see that the first meeting had the biggest impact on trust. Second meeting, same amount of time, same intensity, same positivity, but it has a lower amount of trust building. Bottom left, you can see the numbers. If instead of spending 1 hour in our meeting, we spend 0.1 hour, which is 6 minutes. Our meetings are just 6 minutes. You can see it's going to take a lot longer to build that trust. On the top right, the different types. Look at, even though the first meetings are the most impactful ones, since they were taking place over email, they didn't have as impact as a much later meeting was either over a call, a phone call, or a face-to-face. And you see what happens when we go back to using emails. Positivity, look at what happens when one meeting is negative. The outcome of that meeting, this interaction was just not a good one. And to the same amount that the previous ones were good. Look at how big of an impact it makes. I create this chart that's the trust matrix. And an interesting thing about this is, see, this is, aren't you supposed to show laser? So, never mind. Glad I didn't use this in the military. So look at the person number 5. So on the left side, this is the origin, the trusting person. On the top side, or the columns, is the trustworthiness. Look at person number 5. That person is the most trustworthy because others rank that person very high. Look at person number 6. This is the most trusting person. Look at people at 2 and 3. They ranked each other very low. This is something we need to pay attention to. So, there's something going on between Doug and Nicole. We need to figure this one out. But after every meeting, you rank the interaction with each other as pretty low. Tips for building trust. I'm going to go really quick. Spend more time together, face-to-face meetings. Don't do things over email. Just, get your butt out of your chair, go to their office, talk to them, face-to-face. Team building activities, specifically trust building activities, co-location. Yes, we're a global world, but you know what? If you're in India and I'm here, there's like no overlap between my work time and your work time. Yes, sir.
Hopefully I won't take this off too far, but we've adopted this new technology called telepresence at AT&T.
Right.
We're saying, hey, we want you to lower cost. It's going to be great for the green footprint. And my point is, there's nothing that beats this face-to-face time. How do you get that argument across to decision makers when they're more focused on the price of travel instead of the cost that this trust building has, or the lack of the ability to build trust through these other mechanisms?
So 2 things. First of all, telepresence is video conferencing. Video conferencing, there are words, there's tone of voice, and there's facial expressions. WTF.
Yes.
Right? So you may not be at 100%, but you can be at 75%, which is way better than the 7% if you used email. So use that, use video conferencing. I just love face-to-face meetings. And now I know why, as I develop this formula, I know why I love face-to-face meetings. But at the lack of face-to-face, if we can't meet face-to-face, I'm working with a company in Michigan and I can't fly there all the time, I just say, let's do a Zoom. I want to see your face, I want you to see mine. So telepresence is way better than phone call or email. There is an advantage of doing face-to-face. And so my second answer to you is, remember the first numbers that I gave you? The first numbers and the trust numbers? When you increase the level of trust, which you will in a face-to-face interaction, an interaction where it's more than just you see me, but we're going to grab a coffee together and other things, that will accelerate trust. What would trust acceleration do on a personal level? Remember, 76% higher.
Seems like you need it once and then you can sustain it with the telepresence.
Every interaction stands on its own 2 legs, 2 feet.
I do not think that telepresence as an initial meeting is nearly as effective.
Yeah. And in one of the slides when I talked about what can you do about it, I also said emphasize the importance of the first meeting. Actually, if I go slightly back, I don't want to go too far back, but maximize the first interaction. See the 3rd bullet, maximize the first interaction. Yes, sustaining is easier. Okay, going to jump really quickly. Have ground rules for meetings. I have my compass. Nothing is personal in a meeting. We just have to agree as we go into a meeting. Nothing is personal. We are all equal. That works on fairness. What happens here stays here. That works for vulnerability. Everything is on the table. That goes to constructive conflict. Things that you need to learn how to say. And I know that in corporate America, those are things that you stop using. I don't know. Say I don't know. You don't have to know everything. And when you say I don't know, guess what? You're building credibility. Now, repeat after me. I was wrong. Say it like you mean it.
I was wrong.
Yeah, he knows. He knows. We all know you were wrong. Say, I was wrong. Now, if you get to the advanced level, you can actually say, I was wrong and you were right, which I know it hurts even more than saying that I was wrong. But those are the type of things. Stop saying, and this is on the leadership side, stop saying, when somebody comes to you with something that they've tried without your permission and failed, don't go immediately to say, next time ask first, or don't do it again. Don't say things like, this is not how we do things around here. Remember, I'm going to tell you what you need to do. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. So you decide how we do things around here. There's no such thing as a stupid idea or question. Do not say that. This is under the stop saying. Let's agree to disagree. No, let's disagree. Let's disagree and let's talk about it. When you say let's agree to disagree, what you're saying is we disagree. I don't want to hear you. You don't want to hear me. Let's leave it at that. No, don't leave it at that. Finally, be vulnerable. Ask stupid questions. Be comfortable. Challenge others. Provide them feedback. Be confident in accepting, receiving feedback. Solve problems creatively. Ask questions. So back to you. I don't see your name tag, so I have no idea what to call you.
It would have been difficult when it was there.
So I'm glad it's not there. How? How is this a problem? Why? Remember, avoid asking 6 times because you may get punched. And then ask what? So what do we do about it? My next book coming up next month, it's really made of 3 chapters, 3 sections, 3 parts. The first part is how. How is this a problem? The second part is why. Why is this a problem? And this why actually gave me a TED Talk next weekend. And then finally, what can we do about it? I'm going to skip my program, my clients, and my testimonials and leave time for... Can we have a few minutes for questions, if they have them? No. Okay, no questions. Yes. Man, this is 2 hours in one.
I have a question on
Yes, sir.
on GE. I don't know how much you're
On
GE.
General Electric? Okay.
It's at $125 billion of valuation right now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like TI is at 105 today. So do you
Dollars.
Yes, $1 billion. It's like
Oh, valuation. You're talking about valuation. I'm sorry. You're not
cash
talking about...
problems right now, and
Yeah.
they're reshuffling the board. And as I was going through your theory of startup versus this, have you ever, as you did your research, did you ever probe into GE and see?
GE was not one of the companies that I went into. One other thing to keep in mind, we're talking about a company, so let's say take Texas Instruments, 35,000 employees. There are pockets of innovation. There are pockets of very high level innovation, very high quality.
We did what you said, Kilby Labs. I don't know if you
Yep.
witness to that, but
Yep.
build a separate building, go there and innovate. We did exactly that.
Yeah.
Walked in parts.
Here's the thing. That's not what makes innovation. That's not what makes creativity. It's not that building. It's not that I'm going to give you time to go to that building. It is how I treat you. It's the level, and this is the most important part. The core piece is the trust that we have. If we are not focusing on building trust, then we're focusing on or curing a symptom and not curing the problem. The problem is lack of trust. The symptom is lack of innovation. And you just saw the pyramid, the 6 layers of how you get from this to that.
Yeah. Permission to fail is what I want.
Permission to fail, yeah. If you failed, you did something, you worked for me, you did something that I did not approve, and you said, and you came to me and you said that you failed. My gut reaction is don't ever do that again, or next time ask first, whereas the better reaction is, you know what? Rachel over there, I think I remember she was trying something just like that. And you may want to go and talk to her and see what she found and see if this is something you can benefit from. I need you to walk out of my office thinking this was not the end of the world. Now, by the way, there are companies that take this to the extreme. Let's celebrate failure. No, don't celebrate failure. Let's all remember that we're here to be successful. We're not celebrating failure, but don't make it painful either. I mean, don't make it like this is the end of the world, because if I make it the end of the world for you, you're never going to try it again. Never. Any other questions? Thank you for the question. No other questions. I give it back to you.